College Football Tailgate. I'm Dan Watkins. John McKechnie is here with me as always. So guys, this is going to be part 2 of our Big 12 preview here. You can catch part 1 on any of our feeds or channels, whatever you want to call it. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, College Football Tailgate on all 3 platforms. Head over there, drop us a follow, or hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Doesn't cost you anything. We won't bug you. It just helps us as we continue trying to grow this show in year 2 of the podcast and the show. But anyways, John, what's going on, man? How you doing? Been a couple days. You've kind of been able to process a little bit of part 1 of the Big 12 here before we get into part 2. Any lingering thoughts and just how's everything going?
Things are good, man. Let's see here. I just saw on our Twitter account that it is our Twitterversary. So officially, 1 year of doing this, on to year 2. Pretty cool to have this not only make it through all last season, but keeping things rocking. I'm feeling great about this coming year and all the off-season stuff here. So excited about that. As far as part 1, not a ton of lingering thoughts. I thought we covered a lot of ground there, and really this week, we were talking a little bit off air, getting ready for this show, and it's like, well, I don't know. The SEC Media Days does feel like it. I know this is going to be a Big 12 centric show, but it does feel like this is one of those few topical things that we'll have to get to until fall camps are really in full swing and we start to see, unfortunately injuries or job battles getting decided, that kind of thing. So we do have a little bit of a SEC to paint in here before we fully dive into the Big 12 part 2.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is July 22nd as we record this show. It's also our YouTube anniversary as well, not just Twitter. So it's a big day for us as we have come full circle here, one trip around the sun. But anyways, yeah, so we are going to dive into the Big 12 fully, guys, and finish out the rest of these previews and stuff like that. My lingering thought on that is after really trying to digest more about the rest of these teams, if Texas Tech doesn't win this conference, even with their questions at quarterback, it's a massive fail. They should mow through this thing. That's how I feel about it. But yeah, this is Texas Tech's conference to lose.
Big time. I think it registered in one way when you brought up last week that Texas Tech misses the best teams in the Big 12, but it's not only that, but what does that really mean? So they get a bunch of teams getting fed to the wolves, and in addition to the fact that they're not interested in doing any sort of funny business with their non-con. It's all of an Abilene Christian type of bent. As much respect as I may or may not have for Oregon State and its current form. Yeah, this is an 11-1, 12-0 type of team, and they just are greatly helped. I think that they kind of had that ability to them already, but that schedule helping them, my goodness, it's going to be, they're going to get a very harsh grading with the pencil if they slip up at all, really.
Yeah, so I saw The Odyssey over the weekend.
Nice.
Phenomenal, 10 out of 10. Cannot recommend it enough. It was incredible. But basically, without giving away any spoilers of a book that's 3,000 years old or all that, but Texas Tech is essentially Penelope, right? And the rest of the conference is the suitors, right? Who is going to step up to marry Texas Tech, so to speak, in the Big 12 title game? That's kind of how I'm looking at this thing.
They're all a bunch of clowns, bunch of jokesters.
Exactly. So that is kind of how I feel right now about Texas Tech. But yeah,
I love those Spark Notes back in high school, man. Some of the best Spark Notes I ever read.
Yeah, there you go. And if you haven't gone to see the movie, John, highly recommend. Go get on that. I know you got a newborn and all that, but if you can get yourself, it's 3 hours, you might have to wait, I guess. But
yeah, I'm trying. It's either I'm going to make the effort and find the IMAX, which is half an hour from here, and really make a day of it, or
you're pushing up to 4 hours at that point. Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, so I'm gonna have to put that. I'm gonna clear that with HR and all that before making that happen. But it's either that or watch it as Christopher Nolan really intended on streaming on my 55-inch TV.
Absolutely. All right, so that's enough of the Odyssey talk and all that kind of stuff. Before we dive into the Big 12 Part 2, John, I know you want to get to this SEC stuff. Kirby Smart, he spoke last night on July 21st. He had some comments, took some more shots at Lane Kiffin, which feels like this is just going to be the thing we do all season long. Other interesting stuff here, but you are, without a doubt, our SEC aficionado. How do you feel about everything that's going on down in the Southeast Conference, where it just means more?
Right, of course. So, I mean, like when we first kind of got back and just sort of did a big reset coming into this season, one of the big storylines was sort of identity crisis that the SEC is having right now, where no one feels sorry for them that they haven't won in 3 years, and in fact, everyone is kind of celebrating it. I think every single coach that has stepped to the podium thus far is getting kind of pressed on that, like, hey, what's the deal? And it rings really hollow, or it looks really like weak sauce and take your ball and go home when you're like, well, we have the toughest conference, but then like when you look at cross conference records recently, like if you look at the college football playoff or just during the regular season, bowl season, if you feel so inclined, like the SEC hasn't really been great against other conferences so much in the last couple of years either. So I think it's a bit of like a sore spot for these coaches and for the conference in general. And they want to try to distract and keep holding the party line that like we are the toughest conference top to bottom. Like playing 9 games now as opposed to 8 is a big grueling challenge. Having to go on the road 5 times against conference opponents is really difficult. And like I do agree with them in that sense, but I think they have to understand that it is a new world here, and it's not necessarily the SEC's world. And you built up about 20 plus years of being like the big dog that no one else plays real football but you. And then you have 3 years where you're not in the national championship game. And all of a sudden, getting a dose of your own medicine isn't quite so fun now, is it?
Yeah. A lot of people are pointing that out, that if the SEC was to secede, that well, it wouldn't have made an impact the last 3 years when it comes to the national title game, because they have not been there since Georgia beat TCU, and you were in attendance for that, correct?
Sure was.
Out in LA. So I don't know, John. Maybe it's you problem. Maybe you need to buy tickets to the national championship game right now and assure that the SEC will be there this year.
I'll just meet you all there in January. I think we did that, at least as far as our Airbnb for Indianapolis the year before. We had like gotten it squared away in like August. We felt that good about it. And yeah, I think there was a good cancellation policy.
There you go. Very good. But anyways, yeah, as I continue to schedule things for you, I feel like I'm your secretary today. Just got IMAX, national championship tickets, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, some of these coaches' comments, the ones that are jumping out to me are all coming from one John Sumrall at the University of Florida, the new head coach of the Gators. He is, I didn't realize he was this big of a hardo. That's like kind of what I'm going to say and how I'm going to frame this. We got Sumrall he had a quote like, I grew up thinking there were 3 leagues, the AFC, the NFC, and the SEC. But get over yourself. He threatened to throw a reporter out of the room today, or like made a thing about how if he was one of his players, he would have thrown him out because his phone went off during his press conference, which, yes, that is rude. But no, you don't need to threaten to throw someone out of the scrum or whatever it was when he was he threatened to throw the podium, I think it was. But yeah, so you got that. You got a quote from him. I'm not going to whine and complain about being an SEC head football coach. Fine. Nothing egregious about that. And then there was one other one here that I saw from him that it was, I can't even think of what it was right now. But anyways, he's kind of towing that line, because he also does have some good ones where it's like, if we don't improve, we're going to get our asses beat, right? And he's saying that, like, just because you're the starting, like, we got that quarterback battle going on down there with Aaron Philo, who transferred in from Georgia Tech. And he says, just because you're the quarterback week 1 doesn't mean you're going to be the quarterback week 12, which is fine and all that kind of stuff. But a little bit of hardo vibes from John Sumrall down there in Gainesville as SEC media days roll on.
So, like, I think, like, I respect the tact of going at it that way, but and I think Florida probably, like, their fans probably wanted something like this, because Billy Napier was just so kind of dull as wallpaper type of guy, like just really not all that exciting. of a quote, not all that charismatic, and the results were obviously really bad. So, someone that's willing to kind of puff their chest out a little bit, like it sets you up for if it doesn't go well, then like you're going to hear about it more. But if you're a program like Florida, like you're hoping that you made the right hire here in Summerall, and that he can back this up, and they'll have obviously 9 opportunities within conference to kind of reestablish themselves and kind of set the tone for this Summerall era.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that Florida does have working to their advantage is, of course, their home field advantage that they have there at the Swamp. They are 12-6 in their last 18 home games. So if they can take care of business at home, maybe this Gators team is a little better than some people are thinking. And obviously, we'll dive a lot more into them when we get to our SEC preview shows. But I do like some of the pieces that Florida has, especially that they were able to retain with Jaden Baugh at running back, Dallas Wilson and wide receiver. Like, there are some guys there and some players there that they were able to keep out of the portal and keep there for year one of Summerall's tenure. That I do think there are some building blocks for Florida that if they can now start to recruit and keep kids in state, that should be a scary thing for the rest of the SEC.
Yeah, no question about it. I thought Wilson was on a very brief sample last year. He kind of looked like those like Urban Meyer Florida receivers or something. Like he looked like just kind of an electric factory of a playmaker. And I think Jaden Baugh is one of the best running backs in college football. So you build around that. I'm not totally sold on Aaron Philo. I'm not sure on the arm. Obviously doesn't have a ton of starting experience with Haynes King taking all the reps there at Georgia Tech for the last few years. So he's kind of a mystery box of a guy there. And you don't love the quarterback depth that they have, but if he can just kind of be a game manager and they can be kind of like a physical run first type of outfit, which I think suits kind of what Summerall did a lot of the time at Tulane, then I think that there's a path forward there.
Yeah, absolutely. And one other note, because this kind of ties into Georgia too, and this is a scheduling thing here, but there have been because there's going to be renovations, I believe, in Jacksonville this season. So the Florida-Georgia game, not going to be in Jacksonville. There was talk of it being on campus the next 2 years. Instead, we are staying neutral site here, but we have this year's game in Atlanta. Next year's game going to be in Tampa. How do you feel about that?
I think it's weak sauce. I much prefer the home and home. And as someone who got to Georgia in 2010, like I've never been in the Swamp. I never have, and dubious as to whether I would have been able to next year or anything like that. But I would have liked the possibility of it. I certainly would have thought about it a lot harder than I'm going to think about going to Raymond James Stadium, where like the big sombrero. Like I'm not interested in going there with the baby. But the Swamp would have been a lot of fun. That would have been crazy. That's an environment that's pretty foreign to me. I've like been to, or at least know people that have been to pretty much every SEC stadium, but not the Swamp really. And I don't love the neutral sites games. I think it takes some of the juice out, especially when it's a rivalry game. Like I understand it more for like those week one non-con, like, okay, like let's just kind of meet in the middle here and play at one of these big oversized stadiums, make it worth everybody's while, cash a check, all that. But for an actual rivalry game, like I was on record last year, like I didn't love the Georgia Tech game being at the Benz. I love the Benz, but it's not a college football stadium.
Fair enough, and I think a lot of people feel the same way. There isn't that. It's just these, just gigantic NFL cathedral. They're not even cathedrals, right? They're just like corporate.
Yes.
It's not why we love
it.
This sport.
They're phenomenally built and they're very nice, but there's no character to them
Definitely.
whatsoever. It's like this kind of soulless AI generated like fancy looking building that you're in, but it's, I don't know. It doesn't feel nearly the same as being in a real doggone excellent cultured seasoned college football stadium with tailgating as far as the eye can see outside of it, as opposed to just a bunch of parking lots and stuff.
Absolutely, and I'm getting sick of domes, and I know we're heading towards this. Like, what I think in like the next 10 years, like I'm going to go right off the rails here, but in like the next 10 years, like I think 2/3 or three quarters of the NFL is going to be indoors. which is just ridiculous. Like the Chiefs playing inside shouldn't be happening.
Terrible.
You got the Titans are going to be putting a roof on their stadium, I believe, so they can get a Super Bowl, and they're going to host a Super Bowl. Buffalo, at least those fans stood up and got rid of that, right? So Buffalo's not going to have one. Although I'm sure they would have the capability to somehow build one on top of that new stadium that they got going on there. Cleveland's going to be moving indoors potentially. Denver, like it sucks, man. Like we're losing all of that character that like makes this sport so great on multiple levels, and obviously like all of the college football playoff, with the exception of the Rose Bowl, that's pretty much 99 times out of 100 in perfect ideal weather. This last year, I think we had a little rainy afternoon, but it cleared up in time for the game. Like all of the college football playoff is pretty much inside. I know Hard Rock's got a little bit of a opening there up top, right? But like it's just I don't like it. Like this game is supposed to be played outside, and I don't like it.
Yeah, people get excited about the on-campus games during the CFP, and we saw it, we like called it out before it even happened, but like the quarterfinals or whatever, like get in for Oregon Texas Tech was like $5, $10,
Right.
The year before I could have gone to the Arizona State Texas game for $20 because no one really like cares about those games, and there's no on-campus element to it, so it's like, yeah, good luck getting butts in the seats for that. Like, if people are saving their travel budget for semifinals or the finals or going on campus, what's going to be the odd man out? Is that round of 8?
Absolutely. All right. So do us a favor, guys. Hit that subscribe button if you have not already. Drop us a follow. College Football Tailgate. We are on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We are starting to really cook now and get these shows pumping out much more often as we get closer and closer to kickoff, which I believe we are now like a little over 6 weeks until week 0 or something like that, maybe even less than that. College Football Tailgate 25 on Twitter and CFB Tailgate over on TikTok. All right, so that's going to do it for the SEC talk on this Big 12 preview show part 2. So let's start to get into part 2 here of our Big 12 preview, John. A lot of intrigue with this group because there's just so much unknown here. There are so many new coaches that we're going to get to today, guys that have been elevated or brought back. We got so many transfers as well here that are very interesting. We got some teams that have just literally, it feels like, taken a school from the G5 and transplanted them onto their campus and are now that team going forward, and we'll see how that works there. But before we dive into the individual teams here, I just wanted to talk about some of the transfers in this conference because, like, don't sleep on some of these moves, guys. Like, there are some potential big-time payoffs that are coming from guys that are, what was the old Sports Center segment that they would do? Old face, new place or something like that?
Yeah,
or
sure.
same face, new place, whatever. Well, we kind of got that going on. And I'm just going to give you a couple of my favorites, and you can react to them here. And if you feel the same way or differently or whatever, and then you throw some back at me. But I think when you're talking about transfers in the Big 12, you got to start with the three-headed monster that's at Okie State now, transferring over from UNT at North Texas. Eric Morris is the new head coach there. He brings with him pieces of what was the best offense in the country, yardage-wise last year, and he brings in the leading passer, the leading rusher, and the leading receiver from that team at North Texas last year. Drew Mestemaker at quarterback, Caleb Hawkins at wide receiver, running back, and then Wyatt Young at wide receiver. I love all these pickups and transfers over, and I think this is going to work out quite nicely because there's just so much continuity and familiarity there. They bring the offensive coordinator over too. Like, I love these moves for Oklahoma State.
Yeah, it's hard not to love those. I mean, like there is so much, and we'll get to it, like just so much roster turnover, but that becomes less of a like focal point for any one team now because so many teams are kind of experiencing something like that. Maybe not all of them as extreme as Oklahoma State, but if you are going to have that kind of turnover, having continuity, like just getting transplanted from Denton, Texas, up to Stillwater, not bad, especially when North Texas was knocking on the door of making the college football playoff last year. So I thought that was a really shrewd hire by OK State, and obviously great stuff on the back end there by Eric Morris to bring the UNT brain trust along with him. So I think that's like it's the poster child of transfer portal moves, I would say, in this conference.
Yeah, another one that's not to be slept on. Same thing coming from the G5, a team that made the college football playoff last year, James Madison. Well, the quarterback of that team, Alonzo Barnett, is now going to be the quarterback at UCF. I love this pickup too. Like the more and more you read and watch about this guy, Scott Frost going to coach him now down there in Orlando, right? This kid had 38 total touchdowns last year for the Dukes, over 3,500 combined yards, like one of the best dual threats in the country. Now he goes to UCF, where like that team just like they needed a consistent quarterback last year, and now they're going to have it. And
Yeah, I mean, so some or back in the day, like when UCF was really cooking when Scott Frost was there, part of the deal was having like a dynamic quarterback, and they've been kind of searching for that in the second chapter of Frost being there, and I think that Barnett offers that in a pretty significant way potentially. So I'm really excited to see what he can do, and adding on there, I think Duke Watson in that backfield as an addition is big time. I think he's someone that I really liked at Louisville. He was dollars to donuts, like not quite as good as Isaac Brown, but not that far off. So you're talking about like a dominant ACC rusher potentially. If he were to fully get his shot now going to UCF, like that could be especially when you stack him up next to Barnett, that could be a really scary rushing attack, which I think is what fuels like the best types of Scott Frost offenses.
yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. Health's the big question with him, but if he's healthy, I think he's going to have a very nice season there for the Knights. Another one, running back, we talked about him in part one, Cam Cook, going to West Virginia from Jacksonville State. I mean, this guy's got to be on your list just because, I don't know, he might literally, John, have what, like 90% of the touches for Rich Rod this season? I mean,
Probably
he might have
should.
100%. In September, he might have like close to 100% of like the backfield share and all that kind of stuff with how Rich Rod likes to run his offense and just how good Cam Cook is.
Yeah, he's something else. I'm sure that TCU wishes they still had him. Obviously, really kind of finds his footing at Jacksonville State. West Virginia's in big need of some oomph, and I think Cook can provide that. I think he's there's people smarter than I that study this a lot more closely, but a lot of the times the running backs in particular that go from the G5 to the Power 5 can often struggle. We saw that with a guy like Mekhi Hughes last year, but Cook, I think, is cut from a slightly different cloth. I think that he's going to be able to rock and roll right away there in Morgantown.
And I got one more for you. These two are, it's actually two guys, but they're tied together here because, well, one's kind of replacing the other. Omarion Miller goes from Colorado to Arizona State, right? He's going to slide right into that Jordan Tyson role, we assume. So that's interesting right away for me because Tyson was just so dang good for the Sun Devils the past few seasons. How does Miller step up after an 800-yard season at Colorado last year? Now Kenny Dillingham gets his hands on him, so I'm really interested to see how that works down in Tempe. And then Danny Scudero fills in, backfills, if you will, at Colorado, right? How's that going to look with that offense and Scudero, who was one of the best receivers in the country? I think did he lead the nation in receiving?
He was right in
year?
there.
Yeah, up towards the top. Now he's in Boulder, so like very intriguing wide receiver moves there, both relating to Colorado.
Yeah, I think that we could see both those guys immediately take on the number one roles at their new programs. Scudero will be very interesting because he was so dominant at San Jose State. I think that he's kind of such a huge linchpin as to whether Colorado is really going to be able to do much of anything this year. So keeping close eyes on him. Whereas Arizona State, I think I have some level of like trust that Dillingham is going to keep things on the rails, even if they lost their big guys between Jordan Tyson and Sam Levitt. I do think that adding Omarion Miller is a big add for them. I think as far as some other transfers that caught my eye this offseason, obviously DJ Lagway going to Baylor. Sawyer Robertson was great quarterback for Baylor, and Lagway has shown flashes of brilliance, also flashes of looking nowhere near as or looking like he shouldn't have been hyped nearly as much as he was. So will the real DJ Lagway please stand up? But I do think that going to Waco, fresh start, I think is going to be good for him. I like some of those Houston additions as well. I think Trent Walker was a sneaky good ad for them out wide. Patrick Overmeyer, talked about him a little bit during the Houston preview. as well. I don't know if he can exactly do what Tanner Koziel did, but I do think that he's got some legitimate chops to his game. So I'm excited about him. A little bit deeper of a cut, but I'm looking at Malcolm Simmons if he can climb that depth chart over at Texas Tech. Kenny Johnson coming over from Pitt, that was a really nice get for Texas Tech as well. So sort of a rich get richer type of deal there with Texas Tech. But those were some of the big ones that caught my eye. And then Trey Spivey, did you know this? Do you remember? You do remember. Remember Junior Spivey?
That's who literally was just in my, yeah. Is it his kid?
Yeah.
Awesome.
I thought I was doing some thinking about it. It's like Trey Jr. Oh, it makes all the sense in the world. Like he's the third. So hopefully he's better than Trey Griffey was. I remember being really excited for Trey Griffey at Arizona, and it never really worked out. But here's to Junior Spivey's kid getting it done.
Shout out, like, what is that? Like the '03 Diamondbacks? Is that where we're at?
That sounds about right. Yeah.
I love that. Absolutely love that. Look at that. All right. So that we're going to talk more transfers, I'm sure, as we start to dive into these teams, and that's what we're going to do here. And one of the teams towards the top that we haven't gotten to yet is Utah, right? What does this look like out in Salt Lake City after 21 seasons? Kyle Whittingham is gone. He leaves. Not to sail off into retirement like a lot of people were assuming. No, he went and got a bag in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And so now Morgan Scalley, John, after what was seemingly the longest onboarding in college football history, after 18 years on staff, is now the head coach as he is elevated from defensive coordinator. As we've known, this was going to be the transition, the succession plan, if you will, for a few years out there. But anyways, the Utes, they are plus 650 to win the Big 12, which I believe is third, right behind BYU and then Texas Tech. We got a win total sitting at 8.5, heavily juiced to the over here. When it comes to like familiarity, we got the Damp boys, right? How we feeling? We got Devon Dampier at quarterback. You got Bird Franklin or Ficklin is right behind him. So you know the quarterback's there, but a lot of other new pieces on offense. Defense, I feel like this team is going to be is going to be the same because, well, this is a Morgan Scalley defense. They're going to be hard-nosed. They're going to be tough to play against. We got some interesting things here that I really like. Kevin McGivern is the new offensive coordinator. He was at Utah State last season, so he's replacing Jason Beck, who was awesome. But Utah State averaged over 30 points per game, over 400 yards per game, right? And he had Bryson Barnes last year at Utah State, who was one of just 8 quarterbacks in the FBS with over 2,500 passing yards and 700 rushing yards. I think that sets up very nicely for Dampier to have a monster season here if he's healthy.
Right, so we wanted to see something like that. You know, he obviously had the benefit of playing with his former offensive coordinator last year. So getting someone that can be able to tailor the system to what Dampier does best is huge. But I think overall, I'm kind of selling my stock on Utah. I thought, and I do not regret the Damp Boys movement whatsoever, but I'm a little bit worried about them going into this year, and you know, are they going to be able to go all 12 games here and be able to look the way they did last year, the last couple of years? I'm skeptical of this Utah team. I think that, you know, 8.5 sounds about right, and I'm probably leaning the under, honestly, on this team, even if the schedule is not too difficult.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from, and to like kind of further your point and your side of this, Dampier and the running back Wayshawn Parker are the only returning guys on offense that started more than 5 games last year. So that means across the board on offense, you got a lot of new guys. They have 18 new faces total on the roster. The staff is completely overhauled too. I'm sure Scalley has been putting in a ton of work, and like I do think he's the right guy, and he's going to have a nice program. And Utah's still going to be a very, very tough out. Don't get me wrong. Like I don't think they're going to get rolled over at any point this season, but there is a lot of new there. The offensive line's interesting because it's a completely new offensive line, but they do have 3 seniors, so they are like seasoned, I guess, right? Guys that have been around for a bit. But you go back to the schedule here, and we got that 8.5. I'll pull up the schedule for you guys. I'm leaning over just because, I don't know. I got this thing about Utah where I don't know. They just make me feel good.
Yeah, the circle of trust. I get it.
You know, they're definitely in there. And you look how this thing sets up, John, right? Idaho. You get Arkansas across the country at a 10-15 kick. Utah State at like where's the first loss? Like
Oh
they
man,
should
it might take until
they
Houston.
like and that game's in Salt Lake City.
So
So
yeah,
like they should be going into that holy war undefeated, I feel like. So right there, you're already at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You're already at 8. And
man.
then you got TCU and West Virginia to cap things off. Even if they were to stumble there, like I like Utah getting to 10 wins, guys. That is going to be one of my best bets for this show here, and that's going to be at an alt line with a plus money over too.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think you build a compelling case. I'm gonna stick where I am, and just say that no Whittingham ends up being the difference in any sort of coin flip that they get into. It ends up landing on the wrong side. So I'm gonna say just a bit under. I think they're an 8-4 team.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I appreciate you sticking with your guns there, but yeah, I feel really
Compelling.
strongly just because of how this thing sets up. Like it's all there for the take, and if they're healthy, and if Dampier is the damp boy, as John was professing and proclaiming last year, if he's that guy, I feel pretty good about Utah being like 10-2. And they get BYU at home too. They might even like 11-1 could be on the table. Like Utah certainly could make a run here, and that's why I feel so strongly about them. All right, moving on. Let's talk about Kansas State, another team that has a new coach this season. Colin Klein returns to Manhattan, Kansas, after a couple years as the offensive coordinator down there at Texas A&M. Right? What did he learn in the SEC? Right? Those summers abroad or the semesters abroad. What did he learn in the Southeastern Conference? What is he bringing back to Kansas State? We got a win total, Johnson, at 8.5 for the Wildcats, plus money to the over, plus 115. They are also 14-1 to win the Big 12. But like he's reunited. So Colin Klein reunites with Avery Johnson, who is back at quarterback. He recruited him to Manhattan years ago. Like, can Klein get the best out of him? Can he get from Avery Johnson what he got from Marcel Reed last year down there in College Station? And like, what version of Avery Johnson shows up? Like he to me is like the biggest like X factor wild card guy in this conference, just because we've seen him in the past where he would like come in for Will Howard and look really really good. And like, can we see that guy for a full season, or is this going to be a poor kid that's dealing with a bunch of off the field stuff because his dad just can't keep his hands to himself and stuff like that out, which I forgot all about until when I was doing my research.
That was special. Yeah, I mean, I'm a guy who put real American dollars on Avery Johnson to win the Heisman a couple of years ago, so I still have my dunce cap from that one. He still hasn't completed over 60% of his passes. His rushing has been good, but it has declined each of the last couple of years. So we'll see if Colin Klein can sort of like reconfigure things to maximize him on the ground, because I think at this point we can say that K-State, with Avery Johnson running the show, probably best suited to be a more run heavy offense with him doing a decent chunk of that rushing, and then once the defense is tired, you go ahead and land those deep shots type of thing. That's where you can more so justify completing under 60% of your passes. Did cut down on the interceptions last year, going from 10 to 6, but only threw 18 touchdowns in 12 games. So like that wasn't particularly impressive from him either. So I'm holding the door open for Avery Johnson, kind of making good on the potential we thought he had a couple of years ago. But I'm not like necessarily betting on it. So I do think that there will be a bit of a learning curve here in year zero for Klein as the head coach at K-State. I think that we'll see them drop a few here.
Yeah, Joe Jackson's back at running back. Okay, so a lot of people pointing out this is a guy that ran for over 900 yards in 2025. Well, over a third of those yards, 330 to be exact, were in the final 2 games of the season. Like, remember, he ran all over Utah. He had like 200 yards at halftime in that game. Like, he destroyed them in the month of November. Kansas State's replacing 4 starters on the offensive line. They're also replacing 11 of 14 defenders that started 4 or more games last season. But this is another team, John, where I look at it, and then I take a look at this schedule, and I'm like, okay, I'm talking myself into another over here, because just walk through this. Nichols, Washington State, Tulane is at home, at Cincinnati, Houston and Kansas are both at home. Then they have to go out to Tempe, Colorado. Right. There's a real shot that Kansas State enters the month of November with like one loss.
Yeah, I mean that schedule is pretty cake. So that 8.5, I can't quite trust them to get to 9. I think that there's going to be one game in there that we're not circling it as a loss that trips them up. I can't wait to watch them on HBO Max. So that's fascinating.
There you go. And one little nugget there for K-State guys, they have won 8 or more games in 9 out of the last 10 seasons. So they really have just been so consistent until last year, where maybe the losing of the Ireland game, that curse that we've seen with teams, might have played into it played in there, which is why Chris Kleiman had to go retire and no longer be the head coach. But Colin Klein was there for 5 of those 10 seasons, where they were just rattling off consistent 8+ wins. And I think they'll be right around there again, too, as we take a look at that schedule and just, how it sets up there. So Arizona is another really interesting team in the Big 12, guys. They are 19-1 to win this conference. They have a win total sitting at 7.5, slightly plus money to the over. They return the reigning Big 12 quarterback of the year, or first team all Big 12 quarterback, in Noah Fafita. He put up some big numbers, but this is the first time in his career, John, that he's going to have the same offensive coordinator in consecutive seasons. Fafita is a guy where I feel like if you don't know who he is, you're going to know who he is, just because he does everything for this team. He's a really fun player to watch, and I think Arizona is going to be very relevant in the Big 12 this year.
There was a time not too long ago where he was getting compared to Bryce Young, and not in a derogatory way. What was Fafita? So
like Heisman Bryce Young.
yes, yeah. So that was a thing that happened. So he's still there. I do love an experienced quarterback when I'm trying to build like a bullish case for a team. They have Trace Bivey, who I was talking about a little bit earlier. So gotta love that. I think they brought in like a good tight end too. Yeah, Cole Rusk from Illinois, I thought was a good ad for them. Riscano and Quincy Craig, I thought was a decent 1-2 punch in that backfield. And yeah, Fafita's experience plus having that continuity at offensive coordinator. I kind of thought when we just kind of were starting this back up and getting into the Big 12 that like Arizona would not be a team that I was going to buy the hype on. And Vegas has it at a modest 7.5, but I think that they're a team that could certainly get there. They've got a tough game or two in there, but if they play up to their potential, I think that we're sailing past this.
So my problem with Arizona is I just think the defensive regression is coming, right? This team was so good last year statistically. They were one of, if not like the best defense in college football last year. They were so good at takeaways and turning the ball over. They led the FBS with 2.4 takeaways per game. They had more turnovers forced than touchdowns allowed. They have no returning starters in that secondary. They're bringing in 8 defensive backs from the portal. Like, I just think regression's coming. It's going to be water finds its level kind of thing here, and that this is a tough schedule where they're playing some really good quarterbacks, where I just don't think they're going to have that success that they're going to be able to rely on like they were able to a year ago.
Yeah, turnovers are very rarely sticky year over year, and when you have a year where you're running so hot in that regard, it can go away. So who are you really when you're not ending a game +1 or +2 in the turnover column?
Yeah, absolutely. So we got a 7.5 for a win total here, and like taking a look at this schedule, all the big boys are on it. They have to go to BYU, which is going to be must-see. That's going to be awesome. I'm glad that's a Fox game and not on some streaming service somewhere, behind a paywall. They have to go to Texas Tech. Utah comes down to Tucson. They have to go to Kansas State. Of course, they end the year as they always do, playing Arizona State. But like, this is a tough schedule, John, and they should be right around that 7-8 win mark. But like, I'm staying away and keeping my money in my pocket when it comes to this win total.
Yeah, that sets up a sort of like no margin for error type of thing. Like if we're pretty strong that they're not going to beat BYU or Texas Tech or Utah, like we're running out of margin for them to really have much in the way of cushion. There's only so many gimmies on this schedule, so getting to 8 will be a challenge. Like they're going to have to beat like a TCU. TCU and K-State, I think, are the games they're going to decide whether this goes over or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And that game's in Manhattan too. in late November.
And I think that game went so poorly for K-State last year. Like they might remember that one. Like if I remember right, that was abysmal from K-State. I'll pull that up.
So very good. So while John looks at that and tries to figure that out, we will start to talk about Arizona State here, who Kenny Dillingham has decided to stay in Tempe, stay in his hometown. He spurs Michigan, says, no thanks, guys. Keep your bag. You can give it to someone who's like 50 years older than me, and Kyle Whittingham, who will now be the head coach of the Wolverines. But before I get rolling anymore on Arizona State, you got that game you wanted to talk about there?
I mean, so I think I did misremember, but it was what dropped K-State to 1-3 coming out of the gate. So that's I think like that game signaled like, oh man, if you were high on K-State this year, it's pretty much over. And they had a guy, Arizona had a guy, Ishmati, ran for almost 200 yards on K-State, which they shouldn't be doing. They shouldn't. That's not the type of team that gets run on like that.
Fair enough. All right, so I'm going to reset. We're going to bring it back to Arizona State here. Kenny Dillingham is still the head coach. John, can he continue to build this program in a season now where he doesn't have Sam Levitt anymore, doesn't have Jordan Tyson anymore? Obviously, Scadaboo's been gone for well over a year now. Bunch of additions in the portal here. You got a win total sitting at 6.5 for the Sun Devils. Like, I love Kenny Dillingham, and like everything you read about him is that like in this team is that this might be the deepest team that they've had out there in Tempe. But I don't know, someone's going to have to emerge and step up. It looks like for when it comes to like returning starters, like it's a completely new offense, just about an entirely new defense as well. So it really just comes down to like, how do all of these pieces fit together? They do have the 15th ranked portal class, according to 24/7 Sports. Only 11 of 34 regulars who played 200 or more snaps in 2025 are back. 25 transfers, including 16 from power conferences, as Bill Connolly points out in his preview. Cutter Bali could be the new quarterback. I was curious, as an SEC guy, if you have any thoughts on him after what we saw from him in Kentucky. And then we were talking about Amari Miller, who might step right into that Jordan Tyson role and be excellent at that. But what do you think about their quarterback situation for Arizona State?
Well, they have a lot of experience with Mikey Keene if it ends up going that way. But Bali's like the guy that is going to need to win that job, I think, for Arizona State to be serious this year. And maybe that sounds ridiculous, but not to say that I was completely locked in on Kentucky last year, but I will also say that I never felt like he was the reason why they were losing games. I felt like he did have some turnover issues, to be fair, but I didn't think that he was like so unplayable. He wasn't like a Brock Vandergriff was there at Kentucky 2 years ago. So he's a bit of a gamer. I like. I at least am open to him having some potential there. They obviously lose Raleek Brown from that backfield, but Kyson Brown. It is pretty interesting, and they bring in this guy from Delaware State, Marquise Gillis, couple time 1,000-yard rusher over at Delaware State. I want to say that's where Deshaun Jackson was coaching or something. So I don't know. I'm a little bit intrigued by that, but I think what we see here reflected in the line is 6.5 is your over under. So there's a lot working against Arizona State, and I actually got this question on the radio a couple weeks ago where, I think we're all like rooting for Dillingham at Arizona State, but should he have left after the first, hot season that they had, like, because it's proving these last couple of years that it's hard to win there.
Absolutely. And I know like everybody loves Kenny Dillingham. You won't find anybody that has a bad thing to say about him. And he really is Mr. Arizona State. We know he's from Scottsdale, and like he bleeds that maroon and gold, or whatever color scheme you want to call it there with ASU these days. But yeah, this schedule, it sets up, it's tough, guys. We got a 6.5, as John was just saying. It's standard juice to either direction. So the sports books are kind of just throwing their hands up saying, yeah, you tell us, right? -110 either way. But you look at this, you got that week 2 game at Texas A&M. What a non-con. That's going to be awesome. That's a noon kick on ABC. And then they play all the big boys in the Big 12 as well. Excuse me. You got to go to Texas Tech. You have to go to BYU, at UCF across the country in November, At Arizona this year. Oklahoma State, what are they going to look like? We'll talk about them next. Kansas State's on there as well. Like, if these pieces don't click, and they don't click fast, like I hate to say it, but like the under could be in play here for ASU.
That Kansas game registers to me as something of a must win. Like, you probably kind of expect to go into Texas A&M and lose that game. But man, I mean,
and it's in England. That's in London.
Oh no. Yeah, that could really, and then the overseas curse we're talking about. So like you absolutely have to win that game because after that, like coming off the bye, you get Baylor. Hawaii's just sort of an uncomfortable team to play against with Micah Alejado. And then you get Texas. I mean, I'm saying I'm kind of with the books here, where it's like I'm kind of throwing my hands up, but I don't think it'll be a disaster season, but I think a low level bowl is kind of what we're looking at here for Arizona State.
Yeah, I agree with you. As much as it pains me, because I do like Kenny Dillingham and I do really like the ASU program and what he's done. It's just like there's just so much that needs to go right and click. Now, there are some big pieces that they brought in. People really like that receiver room that they've transferred in here with three guys.
Reed Harris, your guy.
Yeah, from BC. Excuse me. All three of those guys that they brought in could be NFL players. So that is interesting, but just a lot that needs to go right there with portal additions and all that kind of stuff. Speaking of portal additions, I think it's time to talk about Okie State. And what does this look like? Year one under Eric Morris, who he comes in, takes the job to replace Mike Gundy, who was fired last year. The Eric Morris era begins. He brings like all of his big-time players with him. Drew Mestemaker, Caleb Hawkins, Wyatt Young. Those are the three guys, the top passer, rusher, and receiver from the number one yardage-wise output offense at North Texas a year ago. All I know about Oklahoma State, John, is that this team's going to be fun to watch, which is a big change from a year ago.
I know it's always a bummer, or it felt like doubly sad when OK State was as bad as they were. I mean, like long gone are those like even Spencer Sanders type of days.
Sure.
Like it got really ugly really quick there in Stillwater at the very end of Gundy's tenure. Wasn't he was like firing shots at Oregon and everything, and it's just like, are you sure you want to do that? And then it's like, I think Oregon can just name their score against you, and I think the end
they won that game by what, 66?
And it with like their foot off the gas completely. I mean, like, come on. So yeah, I think that this is a stylistic fit for what OK State should be. Like that. What North Texas was doing, what the Brain Trust brings here is a tempo, scoring, a lot of throwing, but also can punish you on the ground. I mean, we had at OK State in recent years like Ollie Gordon or Chuba Hubbard, Justice Hill,
Jalen Warren.
Yeah, the list really went on there. Caleb Hawkins, talent-wise, I know it's just 1 year, but he's kind of like potentially in that discussion with just 1 year here at OK State. Like he looks pretty serious. He's huge, super fast, really hard to bring down. So if you try to kind of overdo it on playing the pass, they can punish you with the run. Now the defense is going to be, and this is time immortal, going to be the thing that dictates how far this OK State team can go. But I'm confident that this offense is going to be really fun, make them a must-watch or something close to it, and someone that I think is going to put at least a scare into some of the big teams on their schedule.
Yeah, just because they're going to be able to score. This offense is going to carry over. It's going to transfer over from the G5 into the Big 12. I think it's a perfect setup there for all of that. You bring Sean Brophy in as the offensive coordinator, who was with North Texas a year ago. But this is really just going to be the fascinating case study of the transfer portal this year, guys, right? 66 players left Stillwater in the portal, 53 come in. Like, that is insane amount of transfer turnover there. A couple of other notes here about Oklahoma State that I just got to point out, right? They haven't won a Big 12 game since 2023. It's been over 2 years. I went and looked at it. November 25th, 2023, they beat BYU 40-34. That was the last time Oklahoma State won a game in the Big 12. They ended 2024 on a 9-game losing streak, John. They ended 2025 on an 11-game losing streak. So the bar is pretty low for Eric Morris in year one. I think he'll clear it. We got a win total sitting at 50 or at 5.5, heavily juiced to the over. I just think with all these pieces and just because there's so much familiarity there, I do think that they're going to be able to take that step up and it's going to translate well. And this schedule sets up nicely. I like the over 5.5. I'm even looking at an alt line and maybe getting them to 7 wins here this season.
I love that. Let's jump in a little bit just because I feel like that if it does click, I mean, if they were as good as they were last year at North Texas, we're obviously step up in competition, but man, you got so much better like depth pieces theoretically around you now. Like you're working with a little bit better talent overall on this roster at OK State, and I think we have a lot of reason to believe that a difference maker at quarterback, the way that we think Mestamaker is going to be something that keeps this team rolling, and like anyone that we would have thought is going to be a tough game, like say like a West Virginia and Morgantown or who else is good, or like at K State. Like I feel like OK State is like totally live in both of those games.
Sure, absolutely, and like I don't have like the memory of what those teams' schedules and who they got coming up behind them, what game they're coming off of, and all that kind of stuff. But like I just think there's a lot of interesting spots there for Oklahoma State where they're going to have a puncher's chance in pretty much every game just because they have the firepower on offense to keep them hanging in there. And if this defense, who I just want one last note, Skylar Cassidy also coming over from North Texas as the defensive coordinator. One season at North Texas, he trimmed the Mean Green's points allowed per game by almost 10 from the year before. So if he can do that again here at Oklahoma State, like this team's going to be able to string together some wins.
Yeah, that'd be. There's a lot of fat to be trimmed off of the points allowed from this team. So let's see it, because it was again a huge bummer to see Oklahoma State as down bad as they were these last couple of years.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And if it sounds like I'm sipping the Kool-Aid on Oklahoma State, I am. And another team that I am sipping the Kool-Aid on and I can't believe there's always one school in like every conference when you're doing these previews and like diving in that you just like, for some reason, you just kind of like fall for them a little bit. UCF is that team for me. Like, and I know like I'm like falling for a Scott Frost team with what we've seen from him over the last like half decade between Nebraska and then a team from a year ago that was 5-7. But this team last year in UCF, they needed steady quarterback play. And as we talked about, they're going to get that this year in Alonzo Barnett, who comes over from James Madison after leading them to the college football playoff. He was the Sun Belt Player of the Year, 38 total touchdowns, over 3,500 yards combined between passing and rushing, a true dual threat. Like UCF, I think is going to be a lot of fun this year. Their win total also at 5.5, minus 130 to the over, plus 110 to the under. They are 62-1 to win the Big 12. I want to put, like, Scott Frost, I think, is back in the perfect spot for him at UCF. I think this is setting up nicely there for UCF to build upon a 5-win season as Scott Frost returned to work.
Yeah, it's just one of those, like you're saying, under the radar, not the splashiest transfer class, but one that I think is going to be functionally very important for them, and I think one that functionally makes UCF a good bit better this year. Loved Barnett. I thought he's just an absolute dog at James Madison. And, Watson, again, is a guy in that backfield who I think pretty much anytime he got the ball at Louisville really popped, in my opinion. So seeing him kind of get to take over a backfield like this, I think is going to be fascinating, especially when you're talking about it in the context of the Big 12. I'm not totally sure on their passing attack, although some people do like Dylan Wade, the tight end, as well. So I mean, there's enough here. So let's get to the schedule here. But I think on its surface, man, like you got year 2 of Frost, you got some guys in now, you some program buy-in potentially. Let's see how this road meets us.
Yeah, so you're looking at it, and what jumps out to me, John, right, is there's no Texas Tech. There's no Utah. There's no Kansas State, right? Like, it's all set up there. You got Bethune-Cookman. You got a game at Pitt, which that's gonna be a fun game. Like week 2, that's got fun written all over it up there in Pittsburgh. But then Georgia State, TCU's got to travel down to Florida. At Houston, at Oklahoma State could be a really interesting back-to-back road game set up there. But another thing that jumps out to me, right? They only have to leave the state of Florida twice after October 10th. So like this all sets up really nicely, I think, for UCF to like kind of be that spot where teams in the Big 12 are like, crap, we got to go across the country. We're going to have to play a team that's kind of feisty and pesky with a really good quarterback that can just like, if you don't pay attention, like, and if you're not on your A game, he can take over a game. Like I like UCF to go over 5.5 wins there and get to bowl eligibility.
Yeah, that's it. That's a nice looking schedule. I think that run early on in their Big 12 slate, I think is going to tell us like just by how much they clear it. Because I think TCU, Houston, OK State, BYU, like all of those teams is combined is kind of a gauntlet for them. They get one bye week in there, but the way they end, I think it sets up really nicely for them. I could see them being or throwing an undefeated November in there as well. And the Baylor game I think is a bit of a toss up. Like you're saying towards the top, Mason Heinschel versus Alonzo Barnett. Like sometimes we don't get much in the way of anything to be excited about that early in the season, like week 2, when teams are usually doing bad non-con games. That actually looks like a lot of fun to me.
I mean, this week too, like I'm just like thinking back of what we've talked about here, all in that same day. We got Arizona State, Texas A&M. That's the BYU Arizona game. We got that fun UCF Pitt game as we were talking about as well. Like a lot of fun there. Oh, Oregon, Oklahoma State. Could that game be surprising and be maybe a slight little bit closer than it was a year ago, where Oregon just wiped the floor with the carcass of Oklahoma State there. But like week 2 setting up to be really fun in the Big 12.
I'm loving that because I hate like the fallow in college football. I hate when there's just a week where it's like, oh yeah, well I got to talk myself into being excited about this or that. Like, and we pay close enough attention to where that's easy enough, but it's nice to have some material to work with, especially in a week that is traditionally pretty rough, pretty slim pickings. That all just big lesson here. Just pay attention to the Big 12 that week.
All right, guys. So for the sake of timing, we got 2 teams left in the Big 12. And to be completely transparent and honest with you, I don't have the slightest bit of an expectation for either one of these teams. Cincinnati and Iowa State are the 2 teams we got left. John, we got Cincinnati's 98-1 to win the Big 12. You got a win total of 5.5 for them. Iowa State is 100-1 to win the Big 12. They're at the very bottom of the odds boards with a win total of 4.5. Matt Campbell took everything that wasn't bolted down in Ames with him to Happy Valley. Jimmy Rogers steps in there, who I do think will be able to build a nice program and like continue what Campbell was doing, but it could be a really rough year 1. And then Cincinnati, like that team's replacing pretty much everything outside of the offensive line, which is a very, very good offensive line. So it could buy them some time as they try to figure out a quarterback battle that's got 3 guys competing for the starting job. But I don't know. I think it's going to be a long season for both these schools.
Yeah, I think that's a fair summation. Like we kind of, as we went through the conference, it's like, oh, that we like a lot of these overs, and it's like, well, that comes out of the pocket of somebody, and I think Cincinnati and Iowa State are 2 teams to bet on being pretty low as far as conference wins are concerned. I kind of like at least the numbers. I can't say that I watched a ton of French at Georgia Southern, but the numbers were always pretty good with him. So like I think that he can at least run an offense at this level and have a semblance of a passing game. But you lose Cyrus Allen, you lose Joe Royer, you lose some other guys from that passing game, and I don't think that French is an upgrade from Sorsby by any means. And then Iowa State just. How can you put expectations on a program that just got ransacked like that? Like, I think if they can just weather the storm, basically, and like have a couple moments this season where they can feel good about, if they can get like 2 conference wins, I feel like that's huge for this Iowa State team. Like, I think it's just kind of that bare the cupboard is. So, like you're saying, Coach, promising for the future, but this could be, kind of back to the doldrums here for Iowa State, at least this year.
Yeah, absolutely. So Bill Connolly writes in his Big 12 preview, Campbell leaves for Penn State. 55 transfers take off as well, which about half of those guys head to Penn State. No offensive returnee had more than 87 yards from scrimmage or any passing yards or took more than 48 snaps on the offensive line. And then on defense, 23 players saw at least 100 snaps last season and 5 returned, but none of them had 250 snaps. So there is just so much new there with Iowa State. Like, I'm not comfortable betting them at all in one way or another. And then when you look at Cincinnati, right, obviously you're replacing Sorsby at quarterback. This defense a year ago gave up 30 or more points in half of their games. So what do you do, right? If you got to fix your defense, well, how about you bring in the defensive coordinator from Army, Nate Woody, who comes over to try to whip those boys into shape there in Cincinnati. So yeah, I don't really have any expectations for either of these two teams, but like I was saying, I think it's going to be a rough sledding for both of them.
Yep. So they're unfortunately the redheaded stepchildren of the conference for this season. They have been dubbed such, and I wish them the best.
All right, very good. So that's going to do it for our individual team recaps. Here's what we do. It's prediction time, right? Let's give our predictions. We're going to go with our championship prediction, our dark horse. Let's do our Heisman pick from this conference. How about a favorite transfer? Maybe a regular season matchup. And then if you got a disappointment as well, we can fire those at you guys. But, John, let's kind of go back and forth. We did this last year. It was a lot of fun with our predictions to come back and look at them. But anyways, I'll ask you your favorites. You ask me mine. And we'll give it out to the people. So without further ado, who's your Big 12 champion in 2026?
This one is going to be boring. Unfortunately, I got to go with Texas Tech. It is absolutely their conference to lose. They got the talent advantage. They got the easy schedule. Hard to see anyone but Texas Tech winning this.
Fair enough. How about your dark horse? Who could surprise you?
I got Houston, 16-1. Could be worse. I think that the combo of Weigman, the rest of that offense, boosted up. Mekhi Hughes, Amari Thomas, Patrick Overmeyer, Trent Walker, a lot to like from that offense. If the defense can keep a lid on things a little bit here, Houston might at least have the honor of getting blown out by Texas Tech in the Big 12 championship game.
Very good. How about a Heisman candidate?
So I think it's Bear Bachmeier, because if BYU makes it to the Big 12 championship game, I think it's because of him. I don't think that Texas Tech is going to produce a Heisman candidate. Like, I'm not looking at Hammond as a Heisman guy. I think that they're going to spread the ball around too much. I don't think anyone's going to have those gaudy statistics that you need to be a Heisman candidate. So great team is TTU, but I don't see a Heisman there. So whereas I think that Bachmeier is going to have to kind of be the Superman for BYU to make it to Dallas for the Big 12 championship game. I think he's likely to put them in position to do that. Therefore, I think he's going to put up some huge numbers. Give me Bachmeier at 66-1. I like a ticket down from that range once in a while.
Makes a lot of sense. How about a favorite transfer?
So I think for me, it's got to be probably like Duke Watson or Cam Cook. I'm excited about Watson and what he can do at UCF in that backfield, just kind of being the guy. And Cam Cook, like we talked about earlier in the show, just an absolute monster these last couple of years at Jacksonville State. I think he's going to be able to make the leap back up to the Big 12 and do it well.
Good. We talked about so many different matchups. We've gone through all these schedules. Do you have a favorite regular season game in the Big 12 that you're really looking forward to?
Did I see it correctly? OK State and TCU, are they playing in like mid-October?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun. So almost anything involving OK State or Houston plus another team that's strong is sort of where a lot of my attention tends to go. And if I remember correctly, I think there's a Houston TCU game that also is going to be a lot of fun.
Very good. And then how about a biggest disappointment?
Give me K-State. I think people are expecting it to be better with Colin Klein there and everything like that. And the third year starting for Avery Johnson. I'm saying they're falling flat. I know the schedule looks a certain way, but I think that there's some games in there that they're going to trip up that we are not expecting. I think K-State falls flat this year. All
right. Very good.
All right. Let's run it back. Your side. Who's winning this thing? Who's winning the Big 12?
I felt this way since the beginning without even reading a single piece of a preview magazine or a article or anything. Texas Tech. There's a reason why they are minus money to win the conference preseason. This team is loaded. They'll figure out the quarterback. There's no excuse for them not to be in Arlington in December.
No, there really isn't. So we're in lockstep there. If there were someone to come from the nether regions of the odds boards, who's the dark horse?
I got to do it. I'm going to go Oklahoma State at 30-1. Like, what if it all clicks, guys? Like, what if it all clicks and this offense looks just as good as it did at North Texas and they're just hanging 45 plus on people, and then the defense like improves a little bit here. Schedule sets up nicely. Eric Morris could get this team somehow to Arlington in December, and that would just be so much fun.
This is the conference where that kind of thing can happen. We just saw with Arizona State a couple years ago, so crazier things have happened. I could see it with OK State. Is there a Heisman candidate coming out of the Big 12?
I mean, if I'm going to go with Okie State as my dark horse, I think I got to go Drew Mestemaker as a Heisman ticket. I don't have the odds in front of me. I'm sure they're even longer than what Bachmeier's are. But Mestemaker was nails and dynamite at North Texas. I think this is going to look really good at Oklahoma State. And if they do make a run, expect him in New York because he's going to be the focal point.
I think I might have this for you. Mestemaker plus 6,500.
Okay, so he's right in that like same kind of ballpark, right?
Yeah, I think. Oh, yeah, right there in Bachmeier at 6,600. So, yep, right at similar type of range
Same
there.
neighborhood. Same neighborhood. We're doing our little real estate shopping there when it comes to Heisman tickets. I like it.
Yeah, location. Favorite transfer from this cycle?
I'm going to go Amari Miller, wide receiver, going to Arizona State, had over 800 yards at Colorado a year ago. This is a guy who brings in almost 20 yards per catch. He's going to step right into that Jordan Tyson role. Now we got Kenny Dillingham with his hands on this kid. I think big things for Amari Miller at Arizona State in 2026.
What are some Big 12 matchups we're circling?
I got to go with the Holy War in November. November 7th, both these teams I think are going to be undefeated going into this game. This game is in Utah this year. This is going to be the huge... Or no, actually, I think BYU is going to have one loss because they're going to lose to Notre Dame. But they'll be undefeated in conference play. Let's put it that way, going into this one. This could very well be the game that decides who goes and plays Texas Tech in the championship game. And you got Utah looking for revenge. The first Holy War for Morgan Scalley as head coach. I think that game's going to be dynamite. I think it's like a 10-15 kick, too. So drink your coffee that day. You're going to need to stay up for that game at night.
Can't wait for that. Yeah, I will be nice and caffeinated, which usually people in Utah are not.
Fair.
I'm going to kick to you to get us started. What are your favorite bets going from this group?
So before I do that, I'm going to do biggest disappointment, and I'm going to go with TCU. I know back-to-back 9-win seasons. I just don't see it this year. Like, I think they're replacing way too much. I don't know. Something about a Harvard quarterback going to the Big 12 does not sit right with me. And I think it's just going to be a long season. TCU's got a difficult schedule. And I think Sonny Dykes going to take a step back this year. So I'm going to go with them as my biggest disappointment. Favorite bets for the Big 12 guys? I like Utah to go over 9.5 wins the way the schedule sets up. You got a plus 164 on DraftKings. I like Kansas State because of how this schedule sets up. I think Avery Johnson will figure something out with Colin Klein back. So give me over 8.5 wins. I even like Kansas State as a ticket to make the Big 12 title game, not to win, but to make it at plus 450. And then give me the overs for both UCF and Oklahoma State at their win totals.
I'm definitely with you on those last two overs for sure. OK State, just hard not to love them and not get excited about them, particularly this year. The Utah one, after we talked about it, it kind of scared me off a little bit. I'm going extra basement for Iowa State. I think that I'm taking the under on the 4.5 wins as well. It's not just going to be bad; it's going to be really, really bad. Uncompetitive. People in names are going to be finding other ways to spend their Saturdays. But by the time October rolls around.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it saddens me because Iowa State is always a fun team to watch. But yeah, this year could be really, really, really rough for them. Although I do think that brighter days are ahead with Jimmy Rogers there as the head coach. All right, John, any other lingering thoughts in the Big 12 here, or are you all set on closing the book on this conference and moving on?
let's close the book. I think that this has been an illuminating exercise. I think we've learned a lot about these teams. Hopefully, our listeners have it as well. I'm excited for OK State. I'm excited for Cam Cook and West Virginia. I'm excited about Houston. Like those are sort of like where I'm putting most of my attention. That's not going to be on a sort of like, not really hate watching Texas Tech, but you kind of had like you got to watch them this year. Love them or hate them.
Yeah, I fully expect the Red Raiders to run right through this conference, and they should. And like we've kind of been saying, if they don't, something went tragically wrong there in Lubbock. But anyways, guys, thank you very much for watching. Hit that subscribe button. Tell your friends that the show is back. College Football Tailgate. We're getting closer and closer to the season. Next up, I think we're going to do the ACC. I believe. So we'll start getting those shows out for you guys too. But thank you very much for watching or listening, and we will talk to you soon.